Welcome everybody. This session is about facilitating one-to-one yoga and yoga therapy live online, and we're going to cover the challenges and opportunities that online brings. And I'm now going to hand you over to Penny, and I've spotlighted her, so if you want to go back to the gallery view to see other people, you can choose between speaker view and gallery view, which is the top right hand. There's a view button if you're not familiar, so you can try that out. And Penny, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session. Thank you all for coming. If you do unmute yourself, just as a household housekeeping technique, if you can try and remember to mute yourself afterwards, although Judy and I have the power, we can mute you too. So if you become remuted, you know it's us that have taken control, and you can take back control if you need to. So I'm going to share some slides with you just to help facilitate our discussion and get through the information quickly, and you can also read along. I won't be won't be dwelling long time on each slide, but just to get us through the information as promptly and efficiently as possible. So hopefully this is all going to work. So if you can bear with me for a moment, I shall begin the slideshow when we're beginning. There we go. Right. So this is where we are, what we're doing today, one-to-one yoga online. So I thought I'd start with a brief outline of what exactly it is we want to begin to cover today. Well, in my session anyway, there's other sessions. Looking a little bit about the ethics, the privacy, insurance requirements, and best practice guidelines. So one-to-one sessions online, obviously not the same as when we do one-to-one sessions with our students in person or our clients in person. But as with all work, especially if we're trained in yoga and yoga therapy, we need to be working within our own scope of practice. And in terms of yoga therapy, you can find out and check on the scope of practices from the CNHC Code of Conduct, Ethics and Performance, and there's also codes of ethics in the IOYT, the International Association of Yoga Therapy. So it's important perhaps to review those every now and again, but also if you've done training, then you will also know that that's part of you should have been covered in your training. Privacy, very important, especially now. So the client needs all the information prior to the session about how to get in, what's going on. They should be asked to complete a health form, whatever you call that, and returned it. I've suggested that you do it in Word documents so that you can add anything if you've talked to them or something prior to that, and then you can make it into a PDF. And so ideally, I believe we should keep them as PDFs so that it's less, can't be changed again by somebody else, and then all other versions of it destroyed. And there's shredders you can get online, or you can lock them into a vault on certain, one drive has a vault, and Google Drive possibly, or Google Drive is also very secure. So if you're using either of those, it's keeping your information in the cloud. They should also sign a consent form, a contract, as you like, between you as the therapist and themselves. On disclaimers, whilst they may not uphold particularly in court, it is important that we have disclaimers, and I would suggest creating a disclaimer that goes on your websites and your forms and any videos and things that you post on other platforms, YouTube, etc. Make sure there's a disclaimer in each of those videos that you place on there. Insurance, we need to check that our insurance is covering us to do online work. They all went madly into this during the lockdown in March through. So most of them established that, but it's your responsibility to check whether your insurance is covering you for that. So insurances have excluded certain things, just to establish that if you weren't aware, that if you are putting things up on YouTube where they are open to the public so that anybody can see them, then they're not going to be covered by your insurance in the same way. That if anybody does harm, theoretically they could claim against you. So if it's pre-recorded and you're only allowing a certain number of people in, so they have to get the link from you, then that's different. And if you've vetted them, given them forms and things before you've recorded it and then shared it, that's different too. That's usually covered by the insurance. GDPR came in 2018, and that's why we have to adhere to these rules and regulations. And if you are keeping people's records, you should have a registration on the ICO, the Information Commission's Office. It's for not that many, it's I think it's about £35–40 a year if you don't have that many people. I'm not sure whether it's actually, it might be earnings. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember now. And sensitive information needs to be clearly explained, what you're going to do with it, and each aspect needs to have a tick box about that. If anybody else needs further information about that, please feel free to contact me after. Technical know-how and equipment. Of course, this is vital if we're going to offer an efficient service and therapeutic thing. So the first thing is to do, once you've gone on, to shut down all other programs that you don't need, because they will pull stuff off your internet. Ideally, you want to be plugged in through an Ethernet cable, which goes directly from your computer or device into your modem, or have an auxiliary booster near you in a socket that's linked directly to your modem through the wiring of your house, if that's what you're using, and you have an Ethernet cable from your computer or whatever to that, because that is the only way you can guarantee, as far as we're possible to guarantee, a stable connection throughout your work. Wi-Fi boosters can help if they're in the local. It depends where you live and what your local Wi-Fi services are like. And if you live out in the Bundu, it's probably more essential for you to have an Ethernet cable than if you live in the middle of a large city where you get fiber optic broadband and things like that. If there's other users around on your devices, young people, children, everybody feeding off it, then again, you'll need it. The weather can also have an effect on your connections. You're probably all aware of that by now. So tips for working online: have your equipment ready, check it's working, make sure your lighting is good. The desktops usually have a light that's shining on them. That's what I've got at the front of me today, plus the window behind my desk. And also I've got overhead lighting, which isn't the most ideal, but it's there. And you may need a microphone. My Surface is quite good, but I also have a microphone that I can attach to myself if I need to, which has worked quite well. But then I've also invested recently in a camera that I can position a little closer to me that has a very good mic. It's an open mic. So it depends what kind of disturbances are around, and if a mic that's in the room might pick up other sounds from the rest of your household too. So lighting is really important, ideally coming from behind the camera rather than from the side, because that can give you odd shadows, and being connected face to face. So I know that when we're looking at the screen and we're looking at each other in meetings, we tend to look down, and I'm looking currently at the camera. So I cannot obviously see very well what I'm reading if I'm looking at you through the camera. So it's a very strange dynamic when we're working through a camera online. Remember to smile. So looking straight at the cameras, I've just said, be close enough that they can see you, at least at the beginning of the session and then at the end, to make that contact. You may have to demonstrate and move away from the camera and take your computer or whatever with you if you do that. Aim not to have too much space around you so that you are there making a good contact with them. So we're starting that relationship. Clothing, of course, is quite important when we're working online, and you've probably all discovered what works and what doesn't work. Stripes and things can work, but they're not great. Black doesn't work at all well online, particularly if your clients are wearing black. You will have issues potentially with seeing if you're trying to observe them and breathing, if you are seeing any of their joints that are hidden by clothing and things like that. Black does not make it easy. So we suggest people don't wear black, but of course some people only have black. Building a therapeutic relationship, have faith in yourself that you can soothe their fears, offer and meet their desires. So finding out what those are, obviously important. Making your connection. So it's your connection to them, your authenticity, showing yourself, being yourself, not trying to be something else. And of course, we all do make mistakes, and we just accept those, and maybe we can laugh about some things. It's about them. So keep them as the focus of the therapy session. Be patient in this time with constant change. We're all being used to being in change, but we never get used to those kind of changes. And we're always waiting for the next announcement of what we're allowed to do in whatever country we happen to be in. So the relationship begins from the first point of contact. So your emails, the phone call, or meeting people face to face when that is possible. So all the usual requirements, being clear about the time you're meeting, the place, the duration. Obviously at the moment it's online, how much it's going to cost, the fact that they need consent, and the session structure. And you'll want to repeat that probably at the beginning of the first session, how it's going to happen. Technology information, maybe have a sheet printed out that you send them by email or post to say all the things that I've just mentioned about, not everything, but things that, do they have good connection? Have they got their socket, their plug ready to plug their computer back in? I mean, how many times have we lost students that we're teaching online in classes because their battery ran out? These things happen. So, has your client got that in place? And be calm. Be clear with the information. Set up yours in advance, be prepared with a little ritual maybe, and always start, how are you today? Be prepared to begin perhaps with even a short guided seated position or something like that to allow them to arrive in their own space and in your meeting together as a community. And sometimes if people arrive really frazzled, they might need a short restorative before you begin the process of a therapy session. Greet them warmly, orientate them to their place, saying, that you're in your place, there's no one going to come in, and they're in their place. Are they okay? No one's going to be walking through. Do they have privacy? Is the phone off? Or if they've got a phone to hand, it's muted, so that they can hear a vibration, or if they've got it to hand in case you lose connection, and you can phone them. So you must have a contact number in case it all goes down, you can still phone them. Of course, if all electricity goes down, you might still not be able to, but hopefully you will. Acknowledge the intimacy of being in their home with them, even if it is through a camera, and being calm and holding the space. So you build connectivity, particularly through eye contact, but also through your voice. And so your setup needs to be, as I mentioned earlier, with your camera. And if you're going to move away from the camera, you say that you're going to move and give them a moment to adjust. And also you might need to ask them to move things around a bit so you can see them more clearly. It can take time, and that's a bit irritating because of the zoom factor, but it's important that you see what you need to see, because that's the way we can be of most service to them. So acknowledge the changed perspective of being online, the unexpected benefits, the silver linings, that we can still see people, and there's opportunities, and we've all learned and adapted an awful lot since we went into lockdown last March in England, and obviously in other places, different times. So acknowledge your learning, and also that you might still be learning, as we found out today already. There are a few people who are still learning things about Zoom if they don't use it regularly. And you may well find that we have to consider this as an ongoing way of practicing, that we will continue to offer online classes, online therapy, because we can see people from all over the world. If they choose us as their therapist, then we can see them and continue to see them wherever they should move to. This is an opportunity. I thank you all very much for listening and watching. I did press stop share, but it's taking a while. Okay, there we go. All right, so I don't know that we need to have any questions and answers right now. We could do, but on the other hand, we might save those, and you can share things perhaps in the breakout room. If anybody has any particular questions, then you can put a question into the chat, and we will have a look through those as we go. Obviously we've got 67 chats at the moment. That's quite a lot, but a lot of those were the introductories, so thank you very much for this. I'm going to hand you back to Judy.
Oh, hi everybody. Thank you very much, Penny. That was really useful in terms of getting ourselves set up to be ready for online. And what we'd like to do next is to put you into breakout rooms, because it's amazing. There are 79 people in this meeting, and it just really highlights to me how much we are craving connection. And, you know, what we do in this time of COVID is to like help each other out. So we could have just had a recording, but, you know, it's really important that we understand, like, what are you doing here? And what is it that you want to get from being here? So we're going to set up breakout rooms. Now, sometimes I've noticed recently when I put people into breakout rooms, it can break the connection and you end up out of the meeting. So if that does happen to you, please just come back in. We can see the waiting room and we'll let you back in. The other thing is that you will be invited to go to the breakout room. So it will say, you know, go to breakout room 5 or whatever number it is. You'll find yourself in a room with 5 or 6 other people. And I'm going to just copy and paste into the chat what we think might be useful topics. So are you a teacher or a therapist? And I know some of you have written that already, and I've noticed we've got people in Spain and the Netherlands as well, so that's amazing. Are you offering one-to-one sessions right now? And if you're not offering one-to-one sessions, like, what is it that is getting in the way? So is it the tech? Is it the that you just don't think it's going to work? Is it something else? So you might want to just talk about that if there's something that you're stuck with. And have you changed your mind? That at the beginning of lockdown, I had done a few one-to-ones online, but I didn't really rate it that much. And now I've learned some techniques and ways to engage people that I think are really useful, and you probably have as well. So we can share ideas. And then also, yeah, see if there's something you'd like to know more about. So I'm going to write in the chat. So I haven't had time to have a look at the individual ones. So before we open the rooms, I've put that in the chat. Are you a teacher or therapist? Are you offering one-to-ones, etc.? So what we'd like is that within that group, you choose one person to be the reporter. So when we come back into the main room, somebody can report back like the highlights of what happened in your group, if there's any tips you'd like to share or questions that you'd like to ask. So it's a bit of a hive mind thing that we can then come back and discuss. So I thought we'd do 25 minutes for 5 or 6 people in the room. So does anybody have any questions about that? Yeah, Penny, go ahead.
Just a quick clarification that due to time restraints, we won't be able to listen to every group when we come back, but what we will encourage is that you write any specific points that haven't come up into the chat so we get those points shared as well. So if that's all right with everybody, obviously we'll select a few rather than everybody, otherwise it'll be a very long session, which I'm sure you've got other things to be doing.
Yes, and of course you can chat about other stuff too. So yeah, see who's in your room, meet some people, because we'd also like you to encourage you, like we talk about, you know, helping people in lockdown, and this work is really needed out there, and that includes us. Like we might need that connection and we might need to have sessions ourselves. And so it might be an idea that if you can get to know people here, that you might want to set up a kind of an exchange where, you know, you swap sessions with each other to look after yourself as well, and maybe to just get an idea of different kinds of yoga therapy and how people work. So, you know, see how that goes. I think that's it. So I'm gonna.
Lisa's just said that perhaps we can't see the chat once we're in it, so maybe people want to save the chat quickly if you want that list of questions that Judy just put up.
Yes, that's right. Thank you for that, Lisa. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you won't be able to see the chat once you're in there, so you might want to write those things down. Or maybe there's something that Penny mentioned in her presentation that has kind of you know, triggered off some question or something that you'd like to share.
You could copy and paste those onto a note as well if you wanted to on your computer.
Okay, thank you. So I am going to open all rooms. You can choose to go. So Penny, if you're asked to go, you just don't go, obviously, if you want to stay with me.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. There's a couple of people who came in late who aren't assigned. So Carl and Anita, I'm going to try and assign you to a room. I'll just choose a random room. It's one room with 4. Okay.
Somebody else has just come in.
Oh, okay. Amanda.
Oh, here she comes.
Yeah. Hi, Amanda. We're just going into breakout room, so I'm going to assign you to a breakout room, and they'll tell you what's going on. I'll put you in a breakout room with 5. Light your red fairy lights. Okay. There's some people, a few people looks like they haven't gone, so they might be somewhere in the background, I guess.
There's another one.
I think it might have thrown somebody out.
They've pressed the wrong button, maybe. They probably left the meeting instead of.
Yeah, sometimes it just seems to chuck people out, tech problems and all that. Good, we're a little bit ahead of ourselves, in fact, aren't we? So more
3
time.
who don't have cameras on who are still.
Say again?
We've got 3 who haven't left because they haven't got cameras on.
Right, yeah, they might be making their breakfast or something and just have it on in the background.
No sound at all. Susan Dick, are you there?
How to keep the boundaries, the clinical boundaries that we need to have as a therapist, and how that can be maybe difficult online because you could be working from home and your client could be in their home and there's a, you know, an intrusion almost there. We considered how the sense of touch with a yoga therapist, if you use hands-on, how would that be different? So our language needs to be really clear and precise to enable the client to be able to use their own sense of touch, self-massage or something like that. And yeah, to enable them to have a full awareness. And the other thing that we picked up on was about how it's important for us to have, as yoga therapists, supervision, because we don't know what's going to come up. And in an online session, somebody could be quite more open with with their own concerns, their own issues, which could trigger us. So supervision is key. Thank you.
Very nice. So the next group, if they're willing, is group 7. Is there a spokesperson for group 7? Do we have a group 7?
Hi Penny, we did have a group 7. We didn't know we had to assign a spokesperson, so we didn't. But if everyone, I don't know if anybody in our group wants to speak at all, or are you happy for me to have a go?
Yeah, Nina's happy.
Yeah.
Oh, Nina, I'll let you go ahead then if you like.
It's happy for you too, Sarah, so go ahead.
Okay. So in our group, we had a mixture of people that have been working as yoga therapists and training yoga therapists, and quite a mix of sort of loving Zoom and not loving Zoom. We talked about, anyone in my group, please feel free to jump in and correct me or say if I've got something a little bit, or haven't got anything right. So we talked a little bit about sort of the things that we like and we don't like, and just sort of tips for each other. So Mary Lou, if you don't mind me using your name, had some very good tips around sort of the simple things that we take for granted. So I took from the session, our discussion, that acknowledging that this is our space is a safe space, that nobody else can hear them from our point of view, and sort of re-emphasizing that point that Sarah May made about touch, about that if you can't touch that and you are directing somebody, that you're sort of acknowledging that they're putting in more effort than you would in maybe in a face-to-face. We talked about the challenges of sort of any sort of mental health issues online, and sort of again a little bit around scope of practice and what we might feel confident about in mental health, and whether we should redirect people at that point. Yeah, I think, is there anything else we'd add?
Mary Lou had a really nice tip, especially if majority of your yoga clothes are black, use a white blanket, which really stands out, makes you stand out, because you have two opposites, black and white, so you stand out. Also that you do see more.
Where would you put the white blanket?
Mary Lou?
Mary Lou?
Yeah, hello.
Like a ghost? Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, I was explaining, thanks, yeah, the white blanket was specifically in relation to the fact that one of the positives, I think, from Zoom is I've started doing more videos for clients. And therefore, if I'm demonstrating something and recording it, or they can record from their screen, I actually cover my mats in my room with a yoga blanket, because it creates great distinction and they can see me very clearly.
Okay.
So that was the reference to the yoga blanket.
I just had visions of them being covered with a blanket and speaking.
Yeah. No.
And doing their breathing exercise. Let's see how you breathe. And you know, as I think to the disservice of Zoom, you actually do see more. You do see a lot on Zoom as well.
Depends on the quality of the camera. And
exactly. So it's taking your time and not being scared to ask your client to move maybe more than once.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Group 7. Thank you very much. All right, so the next one, if we have one, Group 12. In at the deep end, anybody in Group 12?
Yeah, I was in Group 12 and we didn't elect a spokesperson. I'm not sure that we've got anything to add to the discussion, because none of us are actually doing one-to-one therapy work. I think we're all teaching one-to-one classes, therapeutic in nature, but not one-to-one. So I don't know if you want to, I can tell you a few points that we made, but it's not about one-to-one.
Okay, well, let's stick with one-to-one for the moment. And if we need
okay.
We'll come back to you. Thank you. Is there another group that feels that their information can really add to what we've been talking about? You want to unmute, and we'll have a little competition.
Yeah. I unmuted before I heard that word competition, but I'll
no, Lisa, go ahead.
I was in Group 10, and we had a really nice array in our group. It facilitated good discussion. We had somebody new learning yoga therapy predominantly online, which is a real shift to learn yoga therapy online rather than in person. And then we had somebody who was a newly qualified yoga teacher, somebody who's been a long established yoga teacher who's interested in yoga therapy, myself who's doing all three of those things, and yoga teaching, yoga therapy and all that, and somebody else who was working somewhat face-to-face still with people who couldn't get on Zoom. So we had a really nice span, which made for good discussion. And some of the useful points, I think, in terms of the overcoming obstacles, was that when we're doing yoga therapy, we're trying to bridge the gap. We're trying to empower people to take the practice from where we teach them to their home. And now with online, we make that transition. They're in their home. We see where they're going to practice, what they have to practice with. So being able to, instead of saying, what do you have at home that you could use as a support? You go grab that cushion, grab that blanket, put your feet on that couch. And so that gap to getting them to doing it in the space is lessened. So that was one thing that we really saw. Another was dealing with the lack of privacy and the people coming into the screen, and how some of us wanted to set, really strong boundaries around that. And others of us, how you work with, this is the reality of what you live with. You don't have privacy. People do come in. You try to practice and the dog barks. So you can help people in real time with how they stick with the practice, even though they're being pulled away from it. Or, how we negotiated that each individually. Another thing was useful to realize that online works really well for some people, even people you didn't think would be able to, some of the 80-year-olds who figure it out. But there are also people like young children, those with more severe mental illness, those who are older, for whom we've had a more difficult time offering yoga therapy online. And so some choices around seeing them still face-to-face that have been made. And then also, for other people, more people are able to come in because not time, not travel, so that you're actually more able to support people through this time when they're isolated and at home. You can come into their home, you can bridge that barrier. So I think a nice discussion about those things. And then the option to video record, another way we can bridge the gap so that it's easier to record while you're doing it rather than, some people used to be tech savvy and would record their clients, but now we all have much more of that potential. You have to be aware of the storage of that, the privacy around that, all those kind of issues, but you can give somebody a practice where, they can continue to listen to you and be guided in an easier sort of way. So I think that was the summary of our group.
Thank you very much, Group 10. Anybody else? Any other groups? I don't know how much time we've got left, Judy.
Yeah, we've got a bit of time. I noticed that Group 5, Lisa Morris, has put her stuff in the chat. So,
I can summarize if you would like.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Because we had a few different things, actually. A lot of us had in Group 5, I think we were Group 5, had been doing some sessions online or had been thinking about it. And one of the biggest barriers we were saying was about getting new students. We felt that there had been a really wonderful continuation of students we might have connected with face-to-face, and that was really wonderful in that they might be in a different proximity to us. So it allowed that relationship to continue. But actually that step of developing new clients, where to look and how to build that rapport was something quite a few of us were asking. The other sort of big question we asked was about how to really do self-care, because several of us had found it quite draining to do sessions, particularly if there was multiple people in a kind of class, or even just one-to-one, about really, taking that time for self-care before and after, as well as for the client. We've had clients turning up who were already zoomed out after a day of being on Zoom. So how to really set up that space where they don't need to be looking at the camera the whole time, as long as they can hear you, setting up a small practice at the beginning where they can start to rest their eyes and building that trust where they're in their body and we can observe them, but they don't need to be craning their head constantly to look at the screen. I thought that was a really nice tip. And then, yeah, I think those were the two things to add to what had already been said, really. And then if there's technical issues, it might just be the same as us arriving slightly late because of a train that gets delayed, or the client arriving slightly late. So those delays can happen in person as well as online. And one of our group said, as long as we pause and we breathe, and I think Penny's suggestion about making sure you have a mobile number or another way. There's been a lot of WhatsApp sessions in our group as well. So as long as there's a backup session, a backup way, and we take time to kind of breathe and pause and find an alternative, then we can move through that. I hope I did that summary justice.
Thank you. Anybody want to add anything? So group 15, Zoe wrote in the chat that they'd had some experience with people on mobile phone only. So I guess some of us are having that, and often the clients have a mobile phone. That's what they're using as their camera, and that obviously also can be good, can be limiting. Does anybody else have any other group that wants to share any specific things? Maybe you've written it in the chat already, but you'd like to allude to it. And those who have spoken already, perhaps you can jot some of those things in. Andrea?
Hi. So what we had to discuss is I just started doing my yoga training, regular 200-hour, but I've been trained in other types of yoga. And in one of those trainings, my teacher, Lucas Rockwood, offered, and that's why I put it on everyone on the chat, how to teach online yoga. And he gives all these great tips, including like using a light ring and things to that effect, and like the distance and communicating with your students, which has helped me a lot. I've done a lot of, I've just been doing the one-on-one yoga, but I've been doing a lot of EFT practicing because I'm a practitioner. And we have to use our body, and we have to ask the people to breathe and stuff. And so when I start out, I go close and I explain to the students, you know, I'm going to be talking from like this, from this distance it's A, this distance is B and C. Tell me what you feel more comfortable. And as I'm talking to you, whatever you feel more comfortable, say, please go to A. So I'll go back and go closer. So like they feel more engaged. So that's one thing we talked about. Olivia talked about how normalizing the fact that we're all new to using the internet, Zoom. So we all tend to be much more patient with each other when things don't work out. Joanna had talked about being a little more, Helen had talked about being a little more apprehensive about actually using it. So I had told her what I had done originally was videotape myself. So I send myself an actual Zoom link and record it. And I do the practices first and then see how I look. And that gave me a pretty good idea of how I look for the person. And then in terms of background, I mean, right now I don't have it, but I bought on AliExpress for like $6 or €6, a tapestry. So you just hang it. And I do just a very basic beach scene with not too much distracting in the back. So therefore, when I'm doing positions on the floor and stuff like that, that's my background. And I don't, like if it's white, sometimes it's too, it almost like sucks you in. So I do that like beach scene in the back. First, it's kind of calming effect on the students when they see it. And second, they can see me well, even if I use black, because I've gained some weight. And so I feel comfortable using black. And that worked very well. And then also I use the ring. I use a laptop always, and my mobile phone. So therefore, when I do a lot of Zoom, I do FaceTime, I do WhatsApp, but I always do for Zoom, and then I record it and I send it back to the student. And then I tell them at the end of the session, always I kind of frame it on a positive, like, so, you know, I also tell them, well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So I frame it in a positive session. I say, okay, so now what we've covered are these other things. We've done this well. I want you to go ahead and think about any questions you have for next week. And I want you to go ahead and jot them down, things, how you felt in your body, any questions, that kind of thing. Like that next time when we start, we're moving ahead and we're moving along and forward in our process. This way they feel that every step they're moving along.
Great.
And
that's great.
That helps.
Thank you. Yeah, so much.
I'd just like to point out that the ring is brilliant unless you wear glasses.
Right. I see that. But when you're doing your body work, it does work.
Yeah, I know. Nice. I've got a giant one as well that doesn't do that, but just to point out that they work some of the time.
Yeah,
oh, and also, I'm sorry for a time phrase, because, you know, people go over. I thank them for coming and whatever, and remind them we have a class for an hour and 15 minutes or an hour. And because I have another client at such and such time, and I put a little timer. And then so now we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. And then I phrase that like 5 minutes before, like that they don't go over time, because then, you know.
Probably good if you can go.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm just going to stop you here, sorry, because of time issues, and we've got loads of exciting things in the chat, but I'd just like to acknowledge the, you know, the knowledge and the experience that is in this space. And thank you so much for sharing all your tips and ideas. And yeah, the whole idea is to kind of inspire you if there's something getting in the way of you offering sessions online, to just go, hey, you know what, I'm just going to get out there and do it, or just maybe affirming that yes, what you're doing is really working, and helping people to think about all the stuff that we're talking about boundaries and connection issues and staying calm with all of that, and especially self-care and supervision, how we look after ourselves as well. So I think what we do is just have a 5 minutes break. You can read the stuff that's in the chat and make some notes, because we haven't really got time to read it all out right now. And then when we come back, I'll share a presentation, and you know, some of you have covered a lot of these things already, so it really helps me to know like what we've already said in the group, so I'm not just speaking at you and telling you stuff that you already know. So it's now just gone 10 past 11, so shall we just come back at 11:15, and we'll go to about 12, and then Penny can talk about the association after that. So yeah, please come back. I'm here, and if you've got any questions, I'll just be here. So you can unmute yourself and check in or ask a question. Right, so here we go.
Judy?
Hello, yes.
It's Andrea. I don't know if you ever teach people about how to save their chats. You tell them? I don't know if people know. You know how to save chats, because a lot of people don't know how to save the chats.
No, well, I just have a file afterwards, I guess, but I don't know that how to let people, apart from copy and paste and stuff.
Yeah, so what you just do is, if you go down to your chat, where it says, you know, two, and you're supposed to type in a message. If you go all the way to the right, it'll say file.
Yeah.
And farther to the right, it'll have 3 little dots. If you click on that, it says save chat. And then that saves everything up to that point.
Okay, for everybody, or for me as the host?
For everyone.
Oh, excellent. Okay, thank you.
So for everyone, and that does it for you as well.
Yeah.
But for everyone as well. So they should be doing that always. And then it'll save up to that point. So, and then it all gets saved to your Zoom folder chats.
Yeah.
Under that section.
Cool. Thank you very much.
So as you're doing the class, you can go ahead and do that, because it'll save it from that moment. Every time you hit save chat, it stops it to there, and then it starts up again.
Oh, okay, great. Maybe you'd be able to write that in the chat for us. That's
I did.
If you're going to do that, it's important to let people know you're going to save their chat, right? If everybody's going to have their chat, they need to know that before you save their chat.
Okay, Lisa, yeah, sure. Okay.
The chat will automatically save to the person who set up the meeting.
Dear friends, I'd really appreciate some wisdom about supervision, if there's a chance for you to talk about that.
What is it that you want to know specifically?
I want to find a good supervisor.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it depends what your training is and where you feel connected. You know, who, what, where, how. You know,
there may be some people here who offer supervision.
ongoing supervision, mentorship. Yeah.
Share that. What I intend to do after the event is just to email and maybe sum up a few things and see. So I'll add that supervision if anybody is offering supervision or can point you in the right direction, and also the thing about exchanging sessions and people who want to buddy up for exchanges. So I will be following up on that, because obviously we can't get everything done in this short time with so many people together.
It's a great thing, though, to realize that we all need, just like we're supporting our clients, we need support ourselves.
Yeah,
That's the living chain of connection, and that someone with more experience can, you know, offer to hold you as you do this work that's new and different and challenging and great opportunity as well. So I think it's great people are interested in supervision.
yeah, yeah, and exchanges. You know, there's 79 people here. Like, you know, what an amazing community of people to be able to help each other too. So
Yeah, I'm writing down the things I'm learning here.
great. So we're not going to be sending out the slideshows. There's going to be a video, and so you can probably pause the video to catch the slides anyway, if there's something specific. Is that right, Penny, for your?
Yeah, they're not going to be separately sent out, but the recordings will appear.
Yeah.
And there'll be a link from the BCYT Facebook page if you're on Facebook to get it. Otherwise, we'll be sending out, because Judy's got all your email addresses, so she'll send out the link to the people on the record who are here.
There.
Okay, so I think we'll start again. So welcome back, everybody. I'm going to spotlight myself, but again, you can do a different view, and I'm going to share my screen. So the first thing is, can you hear me okay? I know somebody earlier on said they couldn't hear me very well, so I don't want to shout at you because that is really tiring. So you know, that's one of those things. It's like you know, my mum used to shout down the phone in case you couldn't hear properly, and I think there's a bit of that with Zoom while we get used to it as well. So yes, welcome back, and just going through a few things that we've already kind of spoken about, but really the intention for being here. And we were just having a conversation in the break there with Lisa and a few other people to, you know, really bring together this group of people to share what we know and to help each other if we don't know, and to really get inspiration from each other to, you know, get the work out there. And we keep talking about, you know, this time specific, this time that we're living in, where we want to get yoga therapy out there in any way that we can, and it's so
Do you want to start that as a slideshow so that it's a bit larger on the screen?
how do I do that?
Go to the top of the top line, it says slideshow. Go along the from home, keep going along, right, press on that. Yeah, and then it's got, yeah, hold that down.
Can you see that?
Yeah, and go to the other side and it says play from start.
Okay. I spent many years not using
PowerPoint. Use your
PowerPoint.
little arrows on your keyboard. Move arrows on your keyboard. Go right. Yeah.
Is that better? Sorry. Okay. You can see now it's not tiny. I can't see you much, but hopefully this will work. Okay. So yeah, sharing what we know. Getting yoga therapy out there. We're talking about so much struggle and difficulties in the world, and how can we facilitate experiences that meet those needs and bring more ease to people's lives, to bring more hope into people's lives. And I think the word facilitate is really there in itself, like to facile, to make it easy. And so we working today really on how can we make that easy for other people to engage, and that we include ourselves in that. So we also have a need for connection, which is probably why so many of us are here. And so we can help each other out and create connection and talk about some exchange sessions. So you may be stuck. It may be just enough that you're getting through this without giving yourself over to working and offering yoga therapy, and just like, you know what, it's enough just that I'm trying to look after myself, my mental health, my family. And so, you know, that's it. That's, you know what you need to do. That's a really, really useful way of saying that's not why I'm working. I'll jump through. So is there anything you're stuck with? Winter blues, COVID struck, anything like that? And how do we guide from mat to life? And I think that's really important, that whatever we do with our clients on the mat, that we integrate it in some way so that it becomes helpful in life. So it's not just like, yeah, I've had a lovely time, thanks very much, and then, you know, you go back out and start watching the news and getting wound up again or whatever it is. Like, how can you make this last? And see the world through a different lens. So I always think about going to an art exhibition. When I went to see David Hockney, it was quite a few years ago, but like looking at all the paintings and then going out into the world and everything looks a bit Hockney-esque. Do you know that kind of feeling? So, you know, what can we create in the session that has a lasting effect outside? So if we can create a sense of balance or calm or harmony or hope, how can that last when we go outside? So connecting online may be different from in person, and we can look at those differences, and some of you have already spoken about that. And also individual needs. So obviously we're talking about one-to-one, so we're meeting one person at a time. And some of this does, of course, apply to classes. So, you know, thank you for those who are thinking about how this could apply to your classes in terms of connection and languaging and stuff like that. So Zoom eyes, I don't know about you, but I'm getting Zoom eyes, and you know, it's really essential for you to be able to see your client and for them to be able to see you. So we're talking about, you know, the colors and the lighting and everything. So for me, I think it's really important that I can see them more than they can see me, but of course it works both ways. And Penny mentioned the little green button at the top, so you're talking to the person rather than kind of looking at your notes or writing away. So this very, very close observation of what's happening in front of you. Blue light from our devices, especially in the evening, you know, there's this connection between blue light and delaying the release of melatonin and interrupting the rhythms and sleep and mood and cognitive function. So I'm very aware of how much time I'm spending in this kind of two-dimensional surface, and other people too. So how can we get back to a kind of the 3 dimensions and maybe multi-dimensions that we explore through yoga practice? And the eyes being an extension of the brain, so the oculocardiac reflex, that you know, the eyes connected to the heart, and that we can lower blood pressure, we can slow heart rate, but obviously not too much. We don't want to be pressing into our eyes and, you know, people kind of the BP going too low. So that's one to watch out for. And the eyes sending safe messages, you know, to the brain's alarm system to kind of shift into parasympathetic response. So if we're constantly looking into the screen and trying to latch on to what's happening, you know, sometimes it can be very difficult to drop in. So personally, I think that eye care is very important for self-care. And so I'm doing eye exercises with people and using eye pillows. And I've just put this test card thing on because I remember my dad saying, you know, oh, if you watch too much TV, your eyes will go square. I don't know if that was just my dad or whether that was a thing when we started to, you know, watch TV, but I just wonder whether it would be a good idea just to close our eyes for a moment right now. So take a long breath in, long breath out, and just take a moment to sit back. Yeah, glasses off if that helps to just settle. And you may even still be able to see behind your closed eyelids the kind of impression of lights and colors. So just looking into your closed eyelids for a moment and then resting the eyes back into the sockets so that the muscles around the eyes are not in that danger, looking out for danger mode. And there's a message to the brain that it's okay to let go a little more. And then even with your eyes closed, can you look down towards your chin? It's resting the eyes in a downward position. without straining. And then just open your eyes very, very slightly. It's a bit like the pictures of the Buddha eyes. Maybe just slightly open. And you can keep your eyes open, of course, if it feels safer. And you can keep them open or close them again and take your attention to the tip of your nose. Resting the focus on the tip of your nose, eyes open or closed. Just really being in this noticing mode of what's happening as you stay here over time. And taking your attention to the space between your eyebrows. Noticing if anything shifts as you change your focus to the space between your eyebrows. Maybe traveling back in towards the center of the head. And to the back of the head. Have you got eyes in the back of your head? From the front of the head to the back of the head. And from the back of the head back to the center. This third eye used for looking inwards, for insight. Just being here in this feeling mode without trying to make anything happen or need to explain anything. And then to the crown of your head and above. Just taking your gaze up. And then coming back to just rest your eyes wherever they seem to rest the most easily. Notice where you've left your hands consciously or unconsciously. And just bring your fingertips up to your eyes, your closed eyes. So you can just use the pads of the fingers just to press very lightly on the eyelids. You can go from the very inside of the sockets and around the shape of the sockets to the outside edges. And just explore a gentle pressure, different parts of the eyelid, different parts of the socket. And then cupping your hands over your eyes so that you can use your hands to just support your head upright, so you're not dropping your head into your hands. You're using your hands and cupping the hands over the eyes so that you can open your eyes with your hands just over your eyes. Sorry, your hands, yes, hands over your eyes. And then just look down inside look downwards, back towards the chin. You can drop your head a little, just keeping your eyes just open a little bit. You can bring yourself back to the outside world, back towards the screen. And even with your eyes open, just check in and see how you're feeling now. Long breath in, long breath out. Welcome back. So I'm finding that some very simple practices like that can be helpful online, so that we don't have to move the camera up and down and give complicated instruction. So I've just put this slide up about ideas for content, and some of you were speaking about that as well, the different kinds of content that you might offer from in-person to on screen. And again, of course, it depends whether it's a first session or a ongoing relationship as to how you might engage with somebody. But as some of you said, keep it simple, keep the instructions simple, keep the sequences simple, you know, find some really simple practices where there's not too much moving around, because you're in a horizontal box. And so if you're doing a lot of vertical things, it's very difficult, especially if somebody's in a small space, to see the whole person from their feet to their hands. You have to stand back quite far for that. So think about things that maybe fit into a horizontal box. And how can we create a sense of connection? Just letting them know, and you spoke, a lot of you spoke about, you know, looking into the camera, leaning in, maybe not so close, maybe back a little bit, but really letting the person know that you are here with them in some way. And that means responding to what you see in the moment. So, you know, yes, I can see that, wow, that was a really big breath you took there, or, you know, I can see on your face that there's some hesitancy, or, you know, whatever it is, or I can hear in the tone of your voice that, you know, that you're getting that there's some energy around this, or whatever it is. So keep feeding back like what you're noticing, just to let them know that they're really here, that you're really here with them. And, you know, you can be touched by something or moved by something without being in the same room together. So, you know, you might have some ideas about silence, about sounding, about breath work. You know, the sounding thing's great because, you know, when you're on mute, you can make as much sound as you like, you know. I mean, given like who else is in your home or the space that you're in, but sounding, you know, to express what's happening with you can be really powerful. And how can you touch without touching? So again, you can breathe together, you can breathe with each other, you can use self-touch. A lot of you spoke about that. We just did that with our eye exercises and visualizations. And, you know, you can reach into the screen. So if you want to just reach your arm forward now towards your screen, and just close your eyes for a moment, if that's okay, and just imagine that my arm is coming out. Sounds a bit like a horror movie suddenly. Coming out and drawing your arm towards the screen. Can you feel me drawing your arm forward towards the screen? So keep going, and lengthen the arm, I'm drawing your arm towards me. Okay, you can stop now. So, you know, things like that can really, really help in terms of connection. Penny, you might need to just check the time for me because I can't see it on my screen now. Choppy waters and stormy weather, so energetic connection. So that was always my thing about online. Well, you're not in the room with somebody, you don't feel the energy of somebody, there's not that energetic connection. So again, through Zoom or whatever online platform you're using, what cues and clues can you pick up on in different ways? And, you know, somebody mentioned about the room, like you can look around their space, you can see what kind of space they're in. You can say, oh, wow, that chair or that sofa, or yes, grab that cushion, or, oh, you could just come in your pajamas. You could even be in bed. We could talk through a relaxation practice. If you're having difficulty sleeping, you could show up in bed. So using what's around them. So there's a sense of playfulness about, you know, what's in your room. Have you got, oh, what's that over there? You know, bring that in. And really, you know, what you're choosing to surround yourself with as a client or a health seeker can be important. You know, the kind of room that they're in, the pictures around them. So they're in their own home, and there's that sense of safety, possibly, of being there. The intake process. So Penny spoke a little bit about the health questionnaire and, you know, getting someone in, getting someone settled in, taking them through that process of, you know, what do you need from this time that we're together? What's going on for you? Where have you just come from? Have you been running around? Have you been lying on the sofa? Like, starting where you are. The usual yoga therapy stuff. You don't need me to tell you this. So the intention of being together, of collaborating, of co-creating, of validation is even more important, I think, because, you know, they switch off and then they find themselves alone again. Turning inwards. So I think we've gone through this really, you know, they can touch floors, surfaces, desks, textures. They can walk around their room. They can, you know, jump around, walk on the spot, whatever. The self-touch, I think Penny mentioned in her thing, you know, we're all very tender and vulnerable in these times. So being really gentle with yourself and others is obviously, you know, we do that as yoga therapists and teachers and in all of our caring roles. And coach ways to safety and anchoring so that, you know, you don't end up floating off. And I find that there are some people at the moment who are struggling with focusing on the breath as an anchor, especially people who've had issues with COVID and lungs and difficulty breathing, that isn't a safe anchor for them. So, you know, you can think about other ways, and I'll just have a few suggestions to throw out there, and you might have some. Obviously, anchoring on the connection between the body and the ground. Anchoring on the sounds that you can hear outside, so that there's a world going on there and you've just chosen to be still. A visualization of literally some thread or roots that are holding you in place. Sensation in the body. Yes, yeah, thank you. Mudras, drishtis, so we were using that in the eye exercises, a place to focus, eyes open, eyes closed, those kind of things. And so we can use that to shift awareness from this kind of ordinary narrative, like this cognitive storytelling, this is what's happening to me, to a present-centered awareness. And I don't know if some of you noticed that in the eye guided thing that I just did, where you just come into your body and you've got that connection to the inner world, and that can be a sanctuary and a respite from what's going on outside. And I think that's what a lot of the time we're offering at the moment is, you know, to find a sanctuary and a little clearing in the woods, a space to be. And some of you mentioned, yeah, the disturbances in your room and your house, and some of you already mentioned this. Like, yeah, we'll bring that into the practice. Oh, here comes the dog on my mat. Wow, you know, how's that affecting you right now? Where's that taking you? Noise outside, you know, somebody knocking on the door. So just bring that in as part of the experience. Like, how are you responding to that? To keep them present rather than, you know, going off somewhere else. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and, you know, and we come back to yoga as this ancient practice. Like, it has been tried and tested for thousands and thousands of years. And we know it works because we wouldn't be teachers and therapists otherwise. So it's not a new vaccine. It's not even an evidence-based research project that's happened in the last 30 years. It's thousands and thousands of years old. So we can trust in this process and, you know, safe in the knowledge that we know it works. And I find that a huge relief that, you know, I've got it in my life, and people go, like, what would I do if I didn't have yoga? Like, how would I be coping? And then we spoke about all the good things. You have choices. So in this world of uncertainty, you have choices. You've chosen this, you've chosen to be here, you've chosen to look after yourself. What do you want to focus on? You have a choice of what to focus on in this session. You have a choice over the content of this session. That can be quite powerful when there's, you know, a lot of feelings of not being in control of anything. Yeah, you don't need to travel. You don't need to get cold in the winter. You don't need to get home afterwards. You can set the temperature to suit you in your room. You can come in your pajamas. You can use your furniture. We've spoken about that. Sounding, giving expression to what you're feeling. And yeah, you can record those practices. So we've mentioned that. You can record a short practice during a session, which you can send to your health seeker afterwards. And you could also, obviously with permission, to record for your own learning or to share with a mentor or a supervisor if something comes up. But obviously, you know, you need to make sure that you have permission for that in advance. Ah, that's it. I can stop the share. Okay, so what time are we now? 20 to 12. So anything coming up from that? Any other suggestions that have arisen from that? Ideas, questions?
I have another little practice if you want one, just briefly, that I learned this week, which is quite useful. It's also linked to the eyes, but eyes to breath. So if you're interested, it wasn't, I didn't advise it, but it's a really useful one. So shall I do it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if you want to place your hand on your solar plexus or your midriff, yeah. Either hand, doesn't matter. And then hopefully in front of you, beyond you, you have something that you could look at. So it's a bit of a one-pointed gaze initially, but you are looking at that one thing. So it could be your camera dot, or it could be something that's behind you, wherever you are, or across the room, whatever. And you want to really concentrate on that one thing. And as you do that, simply observing what's happening under your hand. Nothing else needs to be done, but keep looking at that one thing. Observing the movement of your hand. And then with your gaze still towards that object, I wonder if I can invite you to look at that object from the back of your head. Judy talked about looking through the back of your head, but looking forwards from the base or from your occipitals and taking in the whole view, as much of the view. Although that thing is in the center, your view is now as wide as it can be. So out the corners of your eyes, you're seeing whatever else is around your space. And be aware of what's happening, if anything, to your hand. And through that, your breath. And if you want to check in with it, you can reduce your gaze again to the one point and play with taking it wide again. So when we're looking at the screen all the time, we become very insular and one-pointed and staring at this small space. This is, well, this or whatever size your screen is what your world is. But actually, there's all that. And did anybody notice how their breath changed when they broadened their view? Did your ribs start to move out perhaps as your gaze widened, your breath broadened? And then it narrows again. So it's a way of checking in with yourself when you are on screen a lot. Have I shrunk? Energetic, physiologically, and whatever else, emotionally, eyes. Or am I able to then expand again? Just a little tool you might find useful. Okay.
People writing in the chat, my breath slowed down, yes, relieved, became deeper, lovely soft eye practice, breathing tightened when narrowed, released when expanded. Thank you. I became more nervy. Yeah, feeling into the nerves around the eyes.
You can use it yourself or share it with clients or students. If you feel it's free.
Yeah. Anyone else? Something come up from the conversations, questions, comments? You can put them in the chat maybe if it's if you don't want to unmute yourself. Oh, there's more things coming in. Broaden my view, my chin lowered slightly, back of my neck, lengthen my breath, my mind calmed. A little bit of resistance and tension when I took my gaze wider. And I adapted and relaxed, and my breath relaxed also. Yeah, so just noticing what happened over time.
Sometimes we put that effort in, don't we? We make effort rather than allowing. We try. So maybe as we allow that breath, the body will automatically change its momentum and allow itself to breathe a little more broadly. Because obviously it's not just affecting the diaphragm, but it's going to affect your shoulders and your back of the head and all the rest of it. Thank you all for sharing those comments. Right.
Okay. So maybe we'll just take a little time to wrap up that part of the day and think about anything that you would like more of for these future meetings.
Yeah, we could talk about supervision.
Yeah, would you just like to stand up for a moment and get into the body? You can stay seated at your desk if you want to. And just take a few moments to move the body, so you can just start to shake out your hands, wrists, shoulders. Take a few long breaths. You can breathe in through your nostrils and out through your nostrils or your mouth. And shake out one leg and the other leg. Just get a bit of movement going. Taking the arms across in a little twist. You can go at your own pace, faster or slower. Notice how the breath is, how your body is this morning. And a little walking on the spot. I can see Penny doing that, so I'm starting to look into my screen, marching on the spot. You could come into a little bit of a jog or slow it down so you're going in slow motion. And then taking both arms up, reaching up, reaching up, reaching up. So this is where the vertical, I find, doesn't work so well on Zoom, and coming down in a forward bend or coming across to a side bend. So I'm not really guiding you in a directive way, but just inviting you to feel into moving the body a little to get the energy flowing. Maybe warming up if you're cold. And then you can come back to your seat and close your eyes or gaze down, and just take your hands to your body somewhere, whether it's your eyes, your heart, your solar plexus, back of your head. Just take your hands to your body to feel its three-dimensionality. Maybe there's more multi-dimensions inside. And just find a place to rest your hands where you can bring yourself to stillness. And just take a moment to feel into your body. And take your mind back over the session that we've just done, the time that we've spent together. And run through it and see if there's anything that feels really important to you, any awareness that you had or something somebody said that feels important. So what will you take away with you? See if there's some little gem, maybe it came up in your own mind or from somewhere else, of how you can keep the awareness or insight alive when you leave here. And if there's a question or a sharing that you would like to offer, something that you would like to know about maybe for another meeting, if something was gone over very quickly or you have another idea. And then take a long breath in, long breath out. Just take a moment to thank your body for getting you here, for everything that needed to happen until this moment. Will allow you to engage today. When you're ready, you can come back to the screen and go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like to share something or have a question or a suggestion. And I'm reading in the chat, a future meeting on yoga therapy and social justice, yoga therapy and health inequalities. I love the connection of a wider community of wonderful teachers and therapists. How it can be important to connect to another. It can be very isolating working at home on Zoom as a yoga teacher or therapist. Yeah, so I'm just hearing a lot of connection and how valuable it is for us as a community to create a space where we can share together. Sharing of experience is so important. I felt such a connection in my group with other people doing the same thing. A lot of need for that. Ways to create more peer support as mentioned above. So valuable, lots of distractions this morning. Thank you for hosting, giving the opportunity to connect and share vital information. Really inspiring and supportive. This is wonderful. Any questions, any not so sures, anything getting in the way, any irritations, like, you know, that's welcome too.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Deborah.
Have you touched upon music? You know, yoga music in the background for these one-to-ones?
Yes, what do you think? Tell us.
I've been trying it very, very softly, and someone did comment saying, I like the music. You know, it does come across helping to calm someone, you know, when you sort of set them up and introduce your, you know, settling them before they start. So music very lightly in the background. I don't know on Zoom, I don't know how it is. Yeah. Me producing that and then other people hearing it. But does it help, do you think? Do you think it's a therapeutic help?
Yeah, well, personally, I think you need to ask the person that you are in a therapeutic relationship with. And you could have the music on and say, you know, do you want me to keep the music on or switch it off?
Yeah, very quiet music.
Turn it down, you know, so really check in with them. It's their session. So it's not what we think as the authorities of how music might impact them, but really about what they want out of the time that you've got together.
Thank you. Yes, that makes sense.
Have a right or wrong answer, but some people might have an experience that they want to share of where it worked or it didn't work. Penny.
Yeah, I just want to say that music doesn't always translate very well over Zoom. It depends on the quality of the music, what it's coming out of. There are ways of linking it through your computer. I'm not that tech savvy, so I can't do that. But it's a similar reason that you know, using sound in a group doesn't work well. Zoom wasn't set up for that type of thing. Yeah. But having it in the background, yes, can be particularly perhaps if you're taking people into rest or restorative and it's just too quiet and they don't realize, you know, they can't know you're there. So it depends. Yes, ask the individual.
Yeah, thank you. Very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll just wait if there's any more questions, but also just to let you know in a moment, Penny's going to tell you about the association and how we can stay connected. So yeah, unless there's anything else.
Judy, can I just say?
Yeah, sure.
I did a training where the teacher would leave music playing during the lunch break. And I found it actually kind of annoying because I was muted and I was off, but unless I left the Zoom meeting, that music was playing and I had no ability to control it. And I had to just like leave the room. So it was lovely music and it was a lovely idea, but it was a place where you had no choice and no control.
Yeah.
And so I actually, just for other side of consideration.
You could take your volume right down. That's the only other way.
Could do that. Yeah, could do that. That's a good suggestion.
That's great. And I think those two words that you said, choice and control, are things that we can give our health seekers or clients or whatever you call them as much as you can, to give them control over what happens in the session, choices, and, that is just so important. So thank you for saying that, whether it's music or it's anything else. I'm just trying to read things in the chat, but my eyes have gone a bit squiffy now. So anybody else would like to read them out if anyone has a voice and eyes?
Okay, Judy, do you want to read through the chat and make notes or anything, or see if anything needs to be helped while I present the other slides, and then we can have more chat and stuff afterwards?
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, let's do it that way. Great idea. Okay.
Take that time now, and then if people have questions about either my presentation or the rest of the other presentations, then we can have a last roll through of so this is another sharing. It's a short slide presentation, everybody, so wrong one. All right, some of you may have already seen this, so if you have, then you could go and make yourselves a cup of tea. Something. Right, so yoga therapy. We're looking to create a professional association called Yoga Therapy UK. And in order to do that, we wanted to make sure that there were enough people out there who wanted to be a part of it and wanted to become members, because obviously it's got to be supported by sufficient funding, which will of course eventually come from the people who belong as members. So the first few questions I'm posing to you all is, why do we need a professional association for yoga therapy? Or do we need one? What can a professional association do for yoga therapists? What's in it for me? What can I do to make it a reality? And when would it come into being? So the first thought is, why do we need one? What do we already have? We already have the British Council of Yoga Therapy, which is the accrediting body. So we look at all of the courses that are run and new courses that are starting, and they follow the same rules and regulations and core curriculum and all that, but within their own styles, so that we make sure that there's rigor in the training. That's what we're looking for, professionals we like to become. So it doesn't have individual members. Yeah. Then there's the Complementary and Natural Healthcare Council, which is the CNHC. And that's the regulatory body, has become the regulatory body for yoga therapy and other therapies. It was organized and devised by the government and formulated the rules, regulations, scopes of practice and all that. And there's a specific set for yoga therapy. So graduates of accredited courses can join that register. And the register is for looking after the public and their rights and their safety. And should we be accused of doing something that's harmful, then the CNHC would look into it from the public view. We would have representation as well and support from the CNHC as the practitioner. Then there's the International Association of Yoga Therapy, which you can join as a member. To become certified, a CIAYT, you either need to have been trained on one of their accredited courses, or you go through a grandparenting process, or you apply as an individual and check that your training fits the standards. So the difference between a regulatory body and a professional body, a professional association, is that the regulatory body works for the public, yes? The professional body works for the profession. And that's the part that's missing in this whole scenario in the UK at the moment. We don't have a yoga therapy specific professional body. A lot of us who are professional yoga therapists would also belong to other associations, which there are many in this country, but they don't specifically answer the needs of yoga therapies. So just a quick look through that and you'll see what the differences are. Some of the differences, there are more differences than those. But they're both about standards, and we want to work towards maintaining or improving standards of yoga therapists, so that would be the professional body's role alongside the British Council of Yoga Therapy. What can a professional association do for yoga therapists? So many of these were taken from a document that was drawn up by Carl Hargreaves, who's also here. Hi, Carl. Ensuring the best and safest practice. The protection and promotion of standards of training and education. Obviously, we work with the BCYT here, supporting and raising standards, including training and education over time. Unity, which is what we're here for today, bringing yoga therapists together from all backgrounds and traditions. Inclusivity and openness as far as possible, not excluding any persons. Dissemination of information about yoga, specifically its therapeutic benefits. The promotion of yoga and yoga therapy, more specifically, raising the profile and good reputation of yoga and yoga therapy specifically. So that would be the role of the Professional Association for Yoga Therapists. Promoting yoga therapy as a respected profession, so trying to make those contacts through healthcare and whatever else we could. A vibrant, dynamic organizational culture balanced with a measured, wise approach. Supporting yoga therapists with access to resources, ongoing learning, insurance, supporting the provision of yoga therapy to the public, encouraging training more yoga therapists, and that might also include creating programs that can support people who have a lot of previous experience and just giving them those extras that they could meet the core curriculum and join the CNH. Achieving reasonable conditions and wages for yoga therapists. Yes, thank you, Carl. What is in it for me? Sangha. Somewhere to belong and find fellowship and support. Mentorship from more experienced yoga therapists. CPD and learning opportunities from a wide variety of organizations and styles. Reduced insurance costs if we can make arrangements with insurance brokers. Events, conferences, online meetings. Access to a variety of useful resources, lists, opportunities, and putting together yoga. You're all on my screen. Yoga therapists and yoga therapy students with mentors and supervision. Links to international yoga therapy organizations and lists of scientific research on yoga therapy. There's a lot more of that coming up. Advice line, perhaps, and conflict support and resolution. What can I do to make it a reality? Sign up. Say that you're interested. Send me your information. I'll put an email address on the chat in a moment. Sign up that you're interested. Offer your skills in admin, setting up, running the organization. Give your time and energy to promote the association to your colleagues, people who aren't here today that might not know about it, but you know they are interested. Give your time to promote yoga therapy in the wider community. Talk about it. Get it out there on chats. Join different Facebook groups or whatever other groups you might be on. And eventually contribute financially. Be enthusiastic. Share the vision. You can't tell I'm enthusiastic. Okay. When would it come into being? Yesterday. No. As soon as possible. When we have members, when we have volunteers, when we put the website up with lists of yoga therapists. And obviously we need input for that. Doesn't mean it's free. We're looking for people who have some expertise or contacts that will help us to get that up, because the sooner we get a website up, we're in business. As soon as that's up, we're in business. Now is the time. So welcome to the future of Yoga Therapy UK. That's mine. So my computer just fell off my screen. Typical. Sorry about that. Crash. All right, so I'm now going to put my an email address you can contact me on.
Oh, cool.
And if you have specific skills, or you know of somebody who has, I have some already from the previous events we've had, the last 2 events, and I'm going to send out a message to everybody that's contacted me sometime probably over the next week or so, and explain where we are and respond to anybody who offers specifics. As I said, the BCYT is giving some money to help set this up. So there is some money available for the website development, and we also want a graphic design, which is the one that's on the slideshow, is just a suggestion. It's not definite, it's a suggestion. If you liked it, let me know. All right. I don't know, if we don't actually own it yet, so we'd need to check out that. Okay. Anybody got any specific questions they want to ask?
Yes, I do. Can you tell me, where does one train, which training course does one go for?
Well, on the BCYT website,
Yeah.
there are a list of the accredited courses.
Okay.
And there's also lists of accredited courses on the CNHC
Right.
list too. So if you have taken yoga therapy training and you're not sure, you can go onto the CNHC, and whether your training depends on dates and things, qualifies you to join the CNHC. And it will also give you how to do that.
Oh, okay. So
if you are a trained yoga therapist and meet the criteria.
well,
then
I'm not a trained yoga. Well, my training went into that, but I haven't got that therapist name.
No, and it's the therapist, not necessarily the therapist tag, but it's the experience, the additional experience that yoga therapy training will give.
Yeah.
Even a senior yoga teacher who may already have all their skills but may not have those skills, that we're looking to. And so the BCYT is going to look into developing a course, a sort of an add-on course, but we need to draw up a curriculum and things like that. And it all takes time, and we're all volunteers. I'm currently the vice chair of the BCYT. It's not fast. I mean, the more volunteers we have on all these organizations, the faster and the more people there are to do these things. So if you do have any time or expertise, then we are more than happy to welcome you.
Oh, right. Even though I've been for over 20 years with FRIOG, which I still am, and I do my CPDs, and I'm more into restorative yoga. Where do I stand? What is my next step?
Well, you'd have to see the core curriculum and see whether everything that you've done meets the core curriculum.
And that I can find on the BCYT or the CHNC. Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, please? One of the questions is just the inclusion, because some of us are yoga therapists qualified, but not yoga teachers. And I'm just always coming up against sort of that as a question, really. And it feels like, an exclusion criteria rather than an inclusion. So I just wondered how that stands. And frameworks for grandfather and grandparent rights.
Yeah, according to the agreements, the core curriculum was set up, and as it is yoga therapy, a prerequisite for accreditation is that you have a yoga teacher training
exactly
before you are able to be accredited. So I mean, if you're already a yoga therapist and you don't have a qualification for yoga teaching, that is a bit of a sticking point at the moment, because the basis of yoga therapy is based on yoga.
Yeah, we have spoken about that individually, about your 30 or more years of experience of yoga teaching without the qualification, and there will be a grandparenting process through.
And you might find that you're okay.
So we've spoken about that as a very specific example that comes outside the norm, if you like. But anyone can join the association as a member. You don't need to be a yoga therapist to join the association as a member.
There'll be different levels of association membership, because obviously we're interested in people who are interested in it, people who are yoga teachers who do a lot of therapeutic type work, people who might be other professionals who are interested in yoga.
Exactly, yeah.
So many different things. So, you know, we're not being exclusive, but in terms of the tier that is the, as you were, professional yoga therapists, that will be an aspect of it, because they, in terms of the registration and the recognition from CNHC, can
framework, yeah.
You know what I mean? They've got.
Can I say something? Penny, is it able to say something?
Sarah.
Yes, Sarah, please go ahead. We can hear you.
I've got the spectrum in front of me here. And there was a very interesting article on page 10 telling us that social prescription is the future for medicine, and that within 5 years, more people will benefit from social prescribing and have a sort of personal health budget with new support for managing their own health.
Yes.
And the NHS is envisaging that we'll be able to look to other ways of healthcare, and the possibility of incorporating yoga into this healthcare in the future really needs to be going forward now.
It is.
So that we're try and get more in touch with the NHS and be able to show them exactly how we might be able to help. Now, if we have some way of actually verifying how we're teaching, and that this has all been verified by, say, VCYT, and we have qualified therapists, we could be really partly in the forefront of doing this.
Yes, Sarah, it's currently being, there's a whole procedure going on with the Yoga and Healthcare Association, developing protocols and what was the minimums requirements for working in healthcare. Lisa, I don't know if you want to say anything about that or not at the moment.
And yeah, have been a series of organizations. The current evolution is the Yoga and Healthcare Alliance, and there is a subgroup on standards looking at what someone would need to know in order to work in the NHS. And we've about finished that. We've got another meeting on Monday. It's currently comprehensive in the sense of what yoga teachers could do and what yoga therapists could do, and what specialist yoga teachers could do is one of the things we're still ironing out. But what we've done is stipulate for anybody who's not used to working in the NHS, what are professional conduct, what are documentation standards, what are quality assurance standards, what are things you need to know and follow and adhere to in order to work as part of a health system. Yeah. One of the things that we haven't done is established how people would, where or how we would host a registry, because the CNHC is yoga therapy only, and there's not a yoga teacher association, and there's no real standards for what somebody needs to have in order to meet. There's no regulatory requirement. We're trying to self-police as a profession to establish some standards that would be at least minimum and ensure that people know how, have the information they need in order to work appropriately in that kind of a setting, at least with, kind of minimum standards. And the dilemma, well, there are opportunities and dilemmas to that. But yes, that's going forward, and then it'll go out. Once the small subgroup has developed this document, it'll go to the bigger group, which is more comprehensive in terms of representatives across all of the yoga teacher training and therapy training organizations. And if there aren't people there, we need to also make sure people are there. But that has been in development for years, and then more particularly over the last year. And with an eye to both people working on site in the NHS, but also working towards social prescribing.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you so much for that information. It's great to know what's going on in the background, because there's so many juicy things happening. And also, I guess there's nothing to stop you writing to your own GP or social prescriber to let them know what you do if there's something that you wish to offer. So we were talking last time about the COVID meeting that we had, and possibly putting together a information sheet about, you know, what you do as a yoga therapist or a teacher that could help, you know, with the within the social prescribing limits. So that's something you might want to explore. I can see Daphne with her hand up. Would you like to unmute yourself?
I have something happened during COVID. At the beginning of COVID, I developed peritoneal cancer and stomach cancer, and I've been through a journey of chemotherapy, and I put this journey on YouTube, and Wessex Cancer have approached me to nitpick some of these videos for Wessex Cancer, and I just wondered whether it might be of some help to any of the yoga therapists who are dealing with people living with cancer. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that about your journey, and sounds very brave to be making videos about that, about your experience. So would you be willing to put your link in the chat for people to?
I'm not quite sure how to put a link in the chat, but I can put my website on there, and then you can just click from the website to YouTube, and then you get all of the videos. So if you want me to do that, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, please go ahead. That's great to share that. And inspirational for people to have ideas of, you know, how to get noticed. Some of you were talking about, you know, how to get clients, and sounds like you know, you've really got yourself noticed in some way where you're being approached by the council. Or you've muted yourself.
It's quite an interesting journey because you suddenly realize how much yoga is of help to people. So yeah, so that's why I put it out there. It was just, it helped me, yoga, so I'm just hoping that yoga will help others. So I will pop that link on, well, I'll pop my website on there, and then you can have a peek if you want to use any of the videos for anybody living with cancer.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's take a breath.
Can I, the lady that headed Group 10, will she put all that on her email or something of what's happening? Was who was the spokesman for 10, Group 10?
What was it that you wanted to know about?
What they're setting up, you know, what she was describing, what she's doing on Monday. Is she there?
It will be on the recording.
Oh,
so
it will
I guess
be.
you can see
Okay.
that. But Lisa, if there's anything you want to add to the chat, if there's something people can look at.
There's nothing public yet.
Oh, there we are. There she is.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
There's nothing public yet, but
No.
But when it will obviously go public. So and there'll be comments and observations and opportunities, and I guess we should bring it back here, Penny and Judy. That would be a good idea, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be
Thanks for interest, Deborah.
Before it's actually published, it'd probably be nice to share it with those who would be affected by it.
Yes, exactly.
Was that an offer to lead a meeting, Lisa?
If I'm the appropriate person to do it, you know,
Well,
we
there
can
are probably
figure
a
that
couple
out.
of people from the YEHA who could be in attendance, perhaps.
Great idea. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, that's YEHA, Yoga in Healthcare Alliance.
YEHA, that's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I think we'll leave it there unless anyone's got anything that's on the tip of their tongue and heading for the unmute button.
Somebody asked what was the difference between the Yoga and Healthcare Alliance and the proposed organization. And so, you know, there are different functions that an organization can have that I think Penny outlined well, but just to say it in different words, there's an organization that is for training programs, which is what the BCYT is. There's an organization for the members, which is what a registry or a certifying body, where you look at the actual criteria of the person versus the training organization. And there's also whether you, so what they're proposing basically is for the practitioners, right? It's a social community for the practitioners, but the promotion of the profession rather than the protection of the public. And you need both. And sometimes they're combined in one organization and sometimes they're split off into different organizations. YIHA is a different organization, which is looking at specifically bringing yoga into the national healthcare environment. That's their specific purpose. And it's not limited to yoga therapy. It's been comprehensively yoga teaching as well as yoga therapy. And so that's why these standards also look at what role yoga teachers could play relative to yoga therapists. And this idea of wellness, promotion, and therapeutic intention, and the different spectrum along those lines. So it's really more specifically geared to yoga in a healthcare environment versus yoga therapy in all the complexity of environments in which it may operate. I think that's
what I'm actually asking is how YIHA, and I love that name. YIHA is fantastic, but how is YIHA proposing to work with the new organisation? That's what I'm not understanding. So you're looking at yoga and things around yoga and working with the NHS, which is absolutely critical. But then what's the link? What's the relationship between that and the new organisation? That's what I'm trying to get to.
I don't know that there is a link. Penny, you may look like you want to speak.
The only thing is that when YIHA have prepared the protocols, then they can be disseminated out to the link person in the NHS. So when there is social prescribing, there's somebody is appointed in the clinical practice or whatever to vet people who are applying to be prescribed, if you like. So they need to have some knowledge of what on earth they're looking at. So if we all rock up as yoga teachers who took a 1 month training somewhere and we've taught for 2 weeks and we say, oh, we can teach a group of people in healthcare. Now, I'm not saying that they could or couldn't, but in terms of that person's who's looking at them, ability to judge, and then there's another person who rocks up who's got 500-hour training or yoga therapy training, then this guidance would tell them what they're actually looking at, what they should expect to see in somebody's CV if they're applying to be working in the NHS. Does that make sense? Okay.
And I think the piece of it is the spectrum.
Yeah, there is a spectrum, but what the protocols are aiming for is that a yoga teacher with a bit more experience is where the starting point is. If that makes sense. So I'm sure that probably makes sense to all of us who are here.
It's the same in the fitness industry. They have registers where people can go to. Same with every industry, isn't it? It's nice to have that for us as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana.
But one of the things that I think Penny's trying to really promote is that professions have professional associations. They have a body that you can join that provides you ongoing education. They provide you a place to meet. They provide you with resources. They provide you with community, and they advocate for the profession. And we need a professional body. And that doesn't eliminate the need for other professional bodies. Professional bodies work with each other, right? So all of these things would interact, but you've got then someplace that people can be directed for information. They can be directed for resource. You've got somebody who can speak for the profession. And then disseminate that information back to the profession. So it's not a replacement, it's an addition. Would you agree with that, Penny?
Yes, I would. Yes, and the other thing, I mean, just a moment, Marilu, I'll come to you, Marilu, that as with any profession, if you are a professional person, then you take that responsibility and your professional, it will cost you money to be a professional. So I appreciate that you may belong to many different organizations in order to be that professional. I mean, there may be some that you'd let go of if when the professional association gets up and running, but there may be others you choose to stay because of the Sangha quality of them all. And they offer you different things. So that it's not necessarily replacing a yoga teaching association you belong to. It's more of, if this is the home of yoga therapy, so that you can have that therapeutic guidance, input, sharing that isn't anywhere else. That makes sense. But yes, it's going to cost you a bit of money, but then the professional association thing, because I mean, if you were an optometrist, your training would probably cost you £1,000 a year to be still qualified or more. I don't know. That's what I've heard, but this is I'm not an optometrist. Mary Lou.
I was just going to mention about the Yoga and Healthcare Alliance, because someone said, "What, how does that help?" There's a training they do, Heather Mason does, with Paul from British Wheel, and it's about 40 hours. And I've done that training, and it was a great training. It gives you an insight into the NHS. It teaches you how to teach a social prescribed class for maybe about approximately 10 people. But generally speaking, YIHA helps you to go into the NHS, providing a sort of an already existing structured class of 10 sessions, which each teacher goes in and teaches in a similar way, to approach the NHS yourself. So I think, Penny, you mentioned earlier, great, try, phone your GPs, apply directly. Brilliant. My experience of working in the NHS is that if you're a teacher and a therapist, to go in as a teacher, it's very difficult, in my experience, to work as a therapist in the NHS. I managed to do it, but I went in originally as a teacher. I explained I worked therapeutically because they were rejecting me as a therapist, because there's a very strict supervisory process within the NHS, certainly the hospital I was in. And you need to have, if you're working therapeutically, you need to be under supervision. And there's nobody within the NHS, certainly the very large hospital I was in, who was qualified to be a yoga therapy supervisor. So that's something perhaps for people like Penny and Judy and Lisa to take on, that's something you perhaps could offer. So I went in as a teacher. I began teaching small groups in neurological rehab for people with traumatic brain injury and stroke. And then as they got to know me, and as they realized how people were responding, they said, well, will you go around and maybe see people in beds who can't come? And they started calling me a therapist, and then they would introduce me to new patients as a therapist. And I did, they asked me, so then they would have patients ask me to come in and do actual one-on-one therapy sessions, where they acknowledged that I wasn't being supervised in the way they would normally allow, but they sort of trusted me. So I would speak to the speech and language therapist, the psychologist, I would feed back to them. But I think trying to go into the NHS, you're best if you're a teacher first, which I think most of us are, to go in as a teacher. That's my personal experience of it. I hope that's helpful.
Can I say on to that what you had is more knowledge than just a teacher when you walk.
I agree. You're absolutely right. Thank you for clarifying that.
But the format at which you offer service was as a teacher. And this is sort of the thing, is that the NHS, yes, you're walking into a healthcare environment and asking to be admitted in without being a healthcare professional. And usually that doesn't work. But what you can do, and it's more cost effective, it's more socially effective, it's more acceptable to teach a group yoga class. And that's what I think you're saying, is that you went in and offered a group format, but what you had as a group yoga teacher was more knowledge than just being a group teacher, especially if you're teaching people with traumatic brain injury.
Absolutely.
Part of this is the differentiating between identity, knowledge, and format of offering.
Yeah. Thank you for making it clear. That's my point. Yeah.
And I think that probably what's true in the NHS is they are going to primarily want us to be group yoga teachers, because it's more cost effective, it covers more people. It's, let's face it, most of the research looks at yoga teaching, not yoga therapy, and at set formats, which is why YIHA made that 10-week set format, because that's what the research supports, rather than more individual work with people. And we aren't licensed healthcare providers unless we are licensed healthcare providers. Some people are, they're both. So it's recognizing that we have something very great that we can contribute, but what is it and where does it land? And then you've also gone on to say this extra part, which is that personal relationships make a difference. When somebody knows you, knows your work, trusts you, sees what you do, new doors open sometimes. Now, I don't know how you're being paid for that one-on-one work, because you're outside of the usual payment mechanisms. So that's another piece of it you may want to speak to.
They paid me the hourly rate that they gave me for being present. So I was paid exactly the same way, but with one person.
Okay.
Yeah. It was super rewarding. It was really very rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish everyone luck to, if that's something you'd like to do. COVID interrupted that for me, which was a pity, not that I'm being selfish about COVID. I just mean I had sort of gotten on a roll where I was actually able to invite a therapist into another hospital. I was asked to recommend a yoga therapist I had trained with, or who, you know, I would know. And it was such bad timing from that regard for us as yoga teachers and therapists, trying to show how helpful we can be in recovery of people who are ill and suffering. Yeah. It'll come back.
It's a wonderful vision of one day having, you know, yoga therapists alongside occupational therapists and physiotherapists at the bedside in healthcare settings. So thank you for that inspirational story of how you managed to get in there in the first place. And like you said, it's the getting in there in the first place, and then when they, you know, they see how it works, and you know, spread your dust your magic around the place, you know, where that can lead to. So thank you everybody for, you know, who's trying to make that happen in the background, and all of us here for the future. So I think we've come to the end of our time together. So I'd just like to thank you all for coming and being part of the community and speaking up and listening and witnessing everybody else here. Penny, anything you'd like to say?
No, just thank you all for your energy, sharing, enthusiasm, which I look forward to having more of. And we will be organising more events, and we've got a few suggestions on the chat, so keep your eyes out. If you're interested in making sure you keep on top, if you belong to Facebook, like the BCYT Facebook page, and then you'll get to see what's going on, and there's quite a lot of information there shared. Thanks to Barbara Dancer, who does a lot of that sharing. And you'll see other articles and things like that. And there are other yoga therapy Facebook pages out there as well, if anybody's interested in having a look around for those that are sort of a bit more UK based than the IOYT one. And so we can keep sharing. Yes, so keep sharing, keep joining, keep being part of the Sangha, and really let's get this going. Let's make 2021 the year of yoga therapy.
Thank you. So I'll just stay on to wait for people to leave and email you a follow-up. Thank you so much.
Bye everybody, thank you so much.
Inspired by you all, thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you everybody.
Thanks,
thank you so much.
Thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Brilliant day, morning. Thank you.
Really lovely morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye, Elaine.
Stop this recording.